So what we are going to do now is have four short presentations from stakeholders and vested interested parties in our industry, not least starting with Marine Energy Pembrokeshire and Tonia.
Thank you, Martin. Well, I'm sure you'll agree that the Minister has certainly set the context for today's discussions, you know, as always, has delivered a very engaging and passionate speech. And I think that really demonstrates the real commitment that we have from government moving forward. And let's keep that in our minds as we go through our discussions today. So, leading on from that, what I'd like to do over the next 10 minutes is I'd like to provide you with a little bit of context on Marine Energy Pembrokeshire for those of you who haven't been involved with MEP in the past. I'm going to do a little bit of a reflection and look back over the past 3 to 4 years that MEP's been in existence and really start to talk about what our future priorities might be. Many of you very kindly completed a questionnaire that we sent out in January, and this is really shaping the future direction of MEP, because essentially MEP is your organisation and we want to make sure that it's of high value to all of you. So thank you for putting the time into that. So we've heard this morning about the many drivers there are for developing this new industry, and not least the very ambitious renewable energy targets that we have at present that we need to meet. And of course climate change is, as the Minister mentioned, it's very clear in all of our minds at the moment as we've witnessed the last few months atrocious weather conditions and the impact that that's had on communities. So, but with every challenge that we have comes great opportunities, and I think when you see the economic benefits, the projections that are coming out of what potentially this industry could provide, they're very significant, and that's without even including the export potential of this industry. We're very fortunate that UK is currently leading this sector, and but we're not alone in our ambitions, but I think that now it's time for us to step it up a gear to ensure that we retain that leading position and really maximise the benefits of this industry across the whole of Wales and the UK. So in a Pembrokeshire context, the reason why Marine Energy Pembrokeshire was started initially was that we're currently very, very dependent on the very important oil and gas sector here in Pembrokeshire. 29% of UK seaborne trade comes in through the Milford Haven, and it's the third largest port in the UK, with over 4,000 skilled jobs to local people. So it's such an important sector for us here. But of course the future is uncertain, and so we really need to ensure that we have a long-term secure future for the people of Pembrokeshire and Wales. And we believe that the future low-carbon economy has a key role to play in this. And so I would suggest that being part of this low-carbon economy isn't optional, it's absolutely essential for us here in Pembrokeshire and for the whole of Wales. And I'd probably go a step further as well and say that not only do we need to be part of it, we need to be driving it. And that's why Marine Energy Pembrokeshire was set up, and that's why it's growing at such a rate. So we've really ensured that we can position ourselves at the forefront of this industry and also help all of you to achieve your ambitions in getting your device in the water. We very early on realised that just focusing on Pembrokeshire wasn't going to be enough, and that we now work way beyond the boundaries of Pembrokeshire, and I think the audience here today is really a testament to that. So we've come to a period where we've finished our 3-year cycle of our business plan, and so that's why I really wanted to look back, to really think about what we've achieved over the last few years, and so when we go forward now that we ensure that we're meeting the needs of the sector. Progress always seems so painfully slow from an external perspective for marine energy, but that is essentially because it's measured by the number of devices in the water, and we all know what a challenge that is, but actually so much has gone on, and there's been so much growth over the past 3 to 4 years that MEP's been set up. And again, looking at all of you here today is a real example of that. The growth path isn't dissimilar to bringing any new technology to market. Of course, it's a little bit more challenging because we're talking about the marine environment, and so that presents its own difficulties. But I really believe that collaboration and collaborative innovation lies at the heart of the success of this industry, and that's not just talking about the development of the technology or working with the supply chain. It's also about the way that we gather our information through research, and it's also about how we regulate the industry. And I think that the work of the former CCW and now Natural Resource Wales in this deploy and monitor approach is a clear example of that. So we're now entering a very critical phase here in Wales. We've heard this morning about Tidal Energy Limited and looking to deploy their device, the first one in Welsh waters later this year, and marine current turbines with the CGen array in 2015 in North Wales. So essentially, Wales, as it seems at the moment, is very much under the radar in this industry. However, it's soon to be at the forefront of a global wave and tidal industry, so it's time to step up the gear and ready ourselves. Over the last 4 years, we've been very busy, David Jones and myself, trying to meet the needs of the sector and really take this forward. I've divided the work into 4 key areas, but I have to say that from where we started in 2010, we've grown way beyond our expectations. And there were 3 of us huddled around the table in a room in Cardiff, and now we struggle to find a room big enough to fit us all in. We now have 22 developers on the working group. Membership of the working group itself is probably in 40 plus members, so obviously, as you can imagine, that presents some challenges. But what we've been doing, we've been really responding to consultations on your behalf, representing the sector. We've been at panel debates and providing speeches to Natural Resources Wales, so we've been very busy really trying to raise the profile of marine energy. We provide support and guidance, and in particular, one of the areas that we've really been concentrating on is that bespoke support for individual developers. So come and talk to us, and we can ensure that we can facilitate meetings where we can bring you together with all the key stakeholders to really help you to take your technology and get it into the water. Collaboration and networking, well, this is an example of the sort of thing we do on an annual basis. We also have our working group meetings. We've had 12 in the past 4 years. And also, this came up quite clearly in the questionnaire, that the importance of us continually raising the profile of marine energy. And we've met regularly with the ministers to raise awareness and to ensure that it stays high up on the political agenda. So it's been a very busy time. So what you said to us was of value to you when we sent out the questionnaire. You really, really valued the seminar and the working group meetings. Industrial intelligence, political profile raising, sector representation at the UK level, and bespoke advice and support. Those developers who were a little bit further down the line also saw real value in supply chain work and research support. And some new areas of work suggested were Marine Energy Wales and really sort of providing an all-Wales approach to the development of marine energy, and really sort of following on from that, having much stronger branding and presence outside of Wales. There were some developers also who felt very strongly that we need to start looking at grid. And so all of this will form part of our business plan moving forward. So essentially, over the next 3 years and beyond, it's going to be more of the same. We're also going to look at research and supply chain as key areas of work. We'd also like to look at potentially looking at some of the key resource areas, such as South Pembrokeshire, and setting up a wave group so that we can really drill down in the area to work out what's needed. We want to work with the universities, particularly CCAM and LCRI Marine, to set up some collaboration for research so that we get a better understanding of what the resource is and get some survey work done in those key areas. We want to work with any successful third-party managers for the demonstration zones, and we will be looking at European funding opportunities. We will be trying to look at those with other parts of the UK as well, so that we can really drive that collaboration. So, as part of that, we'd be very keen now to start talking to the South West and to Scotland to start to develop some MOUs with them to look at how we can work more closely together in the future, and obviously with North Wales as well, as they begin to get more involved with marine energy. This all obviously requires more capacity, and we're very fortunate now that we have a full-time marine energy coordinator, Louise, who's here somewhere in the room today. Louise over there. So we've doubled the size of the team in the last few weeks, so it's exciting times for us as a forum, and there's lots of energy and capacity now to really take this forward. So in conclusion, we've provided a lot of support for the industry over the past 4 years, and this is likely to continue to grow over the next few years. Collaboration and networking was viewed by you as the key areas of work for us going forward, and we'll ensure that that's in our business plan. As I mentioned, this is a critical time for Wales, and we need to make sure that we're ready to position ourselves for this industry. And we're going to look to reach out globally to make connections with other parts of the world to really tackle some of these barriers to getting devices in the water. And so just to conclude, collectively here in this room today, all of you are in a unique position, and we have the opportunity to change the face of the future and to pass on something to future generations of meaning. And so it's a very rare privilege that we all have, and one that we mustn't squander. So I ask you today to please make use of the event and please contribute to all the discussions, to understand that everybody has their own challenges coming from different positions, and it's only by working together that we can really drive this industry forward. So thank you very much.
Tonia, thank you so much for a really interesting synopsis of the work of Marine Energy Pembrokeshire in the Pembrokeshire Forum. Now, our friendly landlord is the Crown Estate in terms of exploiting the resources of wave and tidal around the coastline. And I am particularly delighted to welcome the Crown Estate and specifically Helen Elphick, who is a Senior Development Manager looking after Wales in the Crown Estate, based in London. So, Helen, please, come and tell us about the Crown Estate.
Thanks, Martin, and thanks very much for having us here today. I just wanted to say at the start that we've been very impressed by the work that Marine Energy Pembrokeshire have done for this region, and actually for Wales as a whole, over the last several years, and looking to see what comes in the years to come. But thanks for everything you've done so far. So I'm here from the programme team within the Crown Estate. I think a number of you might know my colleagues David Tudor and Toby Gethin, who work on the policy side, and I know they've done a number of these events in the past. We thought it might be interesting today for you to get a different perspective. So say I work on the development side of things, working directly with the developers. So I'm going to go through kind of what we're up to in wave and tidal at the moment. Before that, I just wanted to quickly cover off what the Crown Estate is. I'm sure a number of you have met us in various different forms, and we are quite a large, sort of multi-stranded organisation. So we're now divided into these 4 areas. The urban portfolio is largely Regent Street and a number of out-of-town commercial property, sort of shopping centres and such like. The change that's been made recently in the last year is that we used to have a marine estate, which was the coastal and the offshore. We've now divided that so that energy and infrastructure really focuses on the offshore environment and particularly on energy projects. And coastal was merged with rural because the business model there is much more about land management and that side of things. So those two are much more aligned kind of business structure. And we also have the Windsor Estate, which is next to Windsor Castle and is sort of, the large park area that's managed on behalf of nature. So we are essentially a property company, but our intention is to generate revenue for the benefit of the whole of the UK. Our values are commercialism, integrity and stewardship, and that really drives all of our business decisions, the combination of those 3. You can imagine there are trade-offs that we have to grapple with between stewardship and commercialism don't always play nicely together, but those are sort of driving force of those 3 and getting the right balance for the long-term good. So with that in mind, our objectives are to enhance value of the estate through active investment and good management. Within the offshore environment, there's obviously a great opportunity to do that, so we're looking to support development of projects that can help with the sustainable long-term energy supplies of the UK. We're a statutory corporation established by an Act of Parliament, and we work closely with government, but importantly we're not a part of government and we're not a regulator, so just want to make that clear. Capital value is approaching 9 billion, and last financial year we generated about £250 million of profit, which was returned to the Treasury to be spent on whichever services they feel most appropriate. So within the energy and infrastructure part of the business, we have a number of sectors. We've been working in low carbon particularly for over 10 years now, and in offshore wind we sort of led the development of a number of leasing rounds, which has helped to drive that sector to the stage it's at today. More recently we've been engaging with a number of emerging sectors, so over the last 5 years we've had a wave tidal programme which has grown, and it's now about 12 of us working in the team. We also look at carbon capture storage and natural gas storage opportunities as well. And just to mention that our sort of historic businesses, I guess, were aggregates, cables and pipelines. Those still exist, and they actually still contribute about half of the overall energy and infrastructure return to Treasury. They're kind of stable, mature sectors now, so the growth areas are wave tidal and offshore wind, but we still have the other sectors carrying on. So within Wales, there are sort of clumps of activity really off the north and south coasts. So off the north coast of Wales, you've got the marine current turbines project in Anglesey. There's also a number of offshore wind farms, aggregate sites, etc. The cables coming ashore. And off the south coast, again, some aggregate dredging and the two tidal energy projects that are leased, and a number of other schemes that are currently in development haven't yet come through to sort of agreement stage with us. So that's a snapshot of where we are. Within wave tidal, we've got a number of strategic objectives. These are to support the growth of the emerging industry, to help attract investment into that sector, and then to encourage the major players to commit to development. Obviously, as you know, the nature of some of those major players has changed a bit over the last few years. We're trying to adapt our business model to be working with the kind of organisations that are now the main players in the space. So yeah, a team of about 12 people working on various aspects of this, looking at leasing, project development and investment. And we do liaise with government. We've been involved in trying to help with the consultation on electricity market reform. We're trying to put through views from the industry on that over the last year, and a number of other things. We work closely with Welsh Government, trying to make sure that what we're doing is aligned with their ambitions and objectives, and similarly with the other developing institutions in the UK. So then going on to a little bit more detail on 3 key areas that we're working on at the moment. Test and demonstration rounds we mentioned a couple of times already. So the intention for this was that last year, 2012 actually, we did a consultation exercise with the industry to see what kind of sites were being sought at that time. The feedback was really that there were enough of the large commercial sites already out there. What people needed was a good and suitable range of sites for testing technology, so that we can really get devices to be commercial scale, and then at that point there might be demand for further really large commercial leasing. So with that in mind, we have decided to continue to offer access for projects at the kind of smaller array scale of up to 30 megawatts. We're doing this in 2 different ways. So the first is through demonstration zones, which we've pre-identified sites that we think have good grid access, good resource, and are consentable. So those locations have been identified, and developers have had the opportunity to look at those. The other aspects of the leasing round is that we have continued to offer individual sites to developers, and this is similar to the leasing rounds we've run in the past. The reason for this really is that some developers have particular needs that would do fall outside of those demonstration zones, or have already been working on particular sites, and we didn't want to exclude that option. But within the demonstration zones, there's also the option for third-party management, which is a new concept we haven't really done before. The idea here is that it should be a bit more flexible, and the owners of those demonstration zones will be able to work directly with a number of different tenants that might come in at different times to develop projects within there. So in terms of the timescales of this, so we announced last May that we were going to launch the leasing process, and then we worked over the summer to define the zones. actually put the call out for bids in the autumn, and then there's a couple of stages of that, which is so developers applied. There's a two-stage process really to get to final preferred bidders identified for sites. That's coming to an end now. In parallel with that, we've been doing a plan level, that's regulations appraisal, just to look at the impacts of the overall plan. Obviously, projects themselves will still need to do their own HRAs to look at plan effects. And we're looking to make a final award of those hopefully around May. And there's more information on this in all of our activities on the website. So moving on to enabling actions. So we established a fund a number of years ago to try and accelerate and de-risk the development of wave tidal projects. This was done as part of the first listing round, which was the Pembrokeshire Waters commercial scale round. But actually many of the projects that are done as part of this are actually relevant to a wider area than just the Pembrokeshire. So those projects focus on a number of areas: health, safety, environmental impacts, planning, presenting, grid infrastructure and supply chain. And one in particular I wanted to flag today is a recent project to look at the priority EIA and HRA issues for wave tidal projects. Now, the logic for doing this really came from experience in the offshore wind sector, where developers were each trying to solve a number of really complex issues around impacts on marine mammals and birds, gathering data for their own projects and trying to assess things in the best way they could. What was found was that, especially when you start looking at cumulative impacts, things were being done differently, and it was difficult for the regulators to be able to take a sort of fair and consistent view. There was a need for more information really at the UK level, or even the European level, rather than just being done at the project level. So in recognition of there being a likely similar issue for wave tidal, we've tried to get ahead of the game really and look at what those key issues would be. So Aquaterra were commissioned to do this piece of work for us, and they produced a list of key priority areas we focused on, what the gaps in current knowledge are, and therefore what actions are needed to address those gaps. And then potentially in offshore wind, there's a group called the Offshore Renewables Joint Instrument Programme, which was set up to try and address some of these issues. So the idea would be that potentially if the same thing is put together for wave tidal, which people are talking about at the moment, then those research priorities would feed into that group. So there's 5 research priority areas there. I won't read those out, but those are what we're focusing on. The report is on the website. There's a link on this slide. So finally, I mentioned that we're also considering investing directly in investor aid projects. So this is really in recognition of what's come up a couple of times in talks already, that the funding has been there really for people to be able to install prototype devices. Not that it's easy to come by, but it has been, people have been able to find it. Where there's a real funding gap is then getting the tens of millions of pounds together that are needed to install the first arrays of devices in the water. Now, the Crown Estate is obviously an organisation that has a strategic interest in this industry succeeding, and we therefore felt that we've probably got something we can offer in the way of trying to sort of add funding into the mix to be able to get those first projects up and running. So what we announced last year was that we are going to invest up to £10 million in up to 2 projects, so up to £10 million each in 2 projects, so £20 million in total, as part of a funding mix with other investors, with the intention of helping to bring those projects to financial close more quickly, and encourage investment by others by sharing risks. So where we are on the process for this, we launched it last year, had a really good level of interest, went through a screening process. The project had to meet a certain number of criteria showing that they were close to reaching financial close. So we did that first part last year. We then looked in a bit more detail at those qualifying projects to identify the serious players amongst them. And then since last summer, we've been working closely with those projects, undertaking due diligence, and then trying to get them, work with them with their own timescales to reach financial close. So yeah, the key areas we're looking at for that are how ready the projects are for investment. We obviously can't take the decision to our board until all the contracts are in place, the grid connections signed, consents there, all those kind of things that any investor would be looking for. And then it is an investment, so we're looking for the project to make it. Obviously not looking for kind of a full level of return that you'd expect to get if you were going out to a bank, but you know, there needs to be a known level of return. So essentially that's what we're doing on that. But if anyone's got any questions on that, there's some more information on our website. We're happy to talk about that afterwards.